The TARDIS landed with a gentle groan, not a crash. It settled on soft, moss-like grass that glowed with a faint silvery light. Outside, the air on Caris 9 hummed with a quiet energy, a feeling of deep peace that settled over everything like a warm blanket. The sky was a tapestry of soft purples and deep indigos, with 2 small moons hanging like pearls. This was a world without sharp edges, a place built on tranquility. Its people, the Shibogans, were just as gentle as their world. They moved with a slow, deliberate grace, their faces etched with a kindness that seemed ancient and profound. Their lives were simple, filled with art, music, and quiet conversation. They didn't build empires or chase after power, they just were. What made the Shibogans truly unique wasn't just their peaceful nature, it was their relationship with life itself. They did not fear death because, for them, it wasn't an end. Every 3 weeks, in a ceremony they called the Great Slumber, every single Shibogan would lie down and pass away peacefully. Their bodies would return to the planet's energy, only to be reborn the next morning, whole and new, with every single memory perfectly intact. They remembered every friend, every song, every shared meal. This cycle was the heart of their society, a choice made long ago to protect them from the ravages of ambition, greed, and the fear of growing old. It was their greatest gift, the source of their unending calm and their eternal youth. This cycle had shaped every aspect of their world. There were no grand monuments to forgotten heroes because no one was ever forgotten. History wasn't something read in books, it was something lived over and over again. Their homes were built to last, but they held no attachment to possessions beyond their immediate use. Why would they when life itself was a constant renewal? The Shibogans saw their existence not as a straight line from birth to death, but as a beautiful repeating pattern, a perfect circle. This ritual ensured that sorrow never lingered for too long, and joy was always just around the corner, ready to be experienced again for the first time in a new body. It was a life without endings, a story told in endless identical chapters. For the visitors stepping out of the blue box, this world felt like a dream. The Doctor, with centuries of chaos behind her, felt the quiet hum of the planet resonate with something deep inside. Her 2 companions, Tessa and Mathew, were immediately struck by the sheer serenity of it all. The Shibogans welcomed them without question, offering them food and shelter. Their leader, an elder named Lyra, whose eyes held the wisdom of 1,000 rebirths, explained their custom with a simple smile. "We do not run from life," she said softly. "We embrace it, all of it, by letting it wash over us again and again. It keeps us kind, it keeps us connected." The travelers had seen many wonders, but this was different. This wasn't technology or magic, it was a choice, a way of being that challenged everything they knew about what it meant to live. The 3 travelers reacted to the Shibogans' eternal cycle in their own distinct ways. Tessa, the sensitive one, was deeply moved. She saw the beauty in their ritual, the profound courage it took to let go of life, trusting it would return. She walked among the Shibogans, listening to their stories, her heart aching with a mixture of awe and sadness. To her, their existence was a beautiful poem about acceptance. She saw the love they had for one another, a love that was never diminished by loss because loss was only temporary. She watched children playing, knowing they held the memories of countless lifetimes, and she found it breathtaking. For Tessa, the Great Slumber was not a burden, but a profound act of faith that elevated their simple lives into something sacred. Mathew, ever the skeptic, couldn't see it that way at all. He was a man of action, of progress, and this planet felt like a beautiful prison. "It's unnatural," he muttered to the Doctor, watching the Shibogans tend their gardens with serene smiles. "They're stuck. They never change, never grow, never learn anything new. What's the point of living the same life over and over again?" He saw their ritual not as a gift, but as a cage they had built for themselves. He questioned the very idea of a life without ambition. To him, struggle and hardship were what gave life meaning. The Shibogans' perfect peace felt hollow to him, a denial of the very things that made a person truly alive. He saw their smiles and wondered what they were hiding from. The Doctor, of course, was utterly fascinated. She stood between Tessa's empathy and Mathew's skepticism, her ancient mind buzzing with questions. The Shibogan cycle reminded her of something deeply personal, her own regenerations. The process of dying and being reborn, of changing yet remaining the same, was the story of her centuries-long life. But there were crucial differences. Her regenerations were violent, chaotic, and unpredictable. They were a biological imperative, a desperate fight for survival, not a peaceful, chosen ritual. She lost a part of herself each time, her personality shifting like sand. The Shibogans, however, kept everything. Their memories, their identities, their very essence remained untouched. It was a perfected version of what she went through, and she was both envious and wary of it. Lyra, the elder, sensed the doctor's curiosity. She explained that their cycle was a deliberate choice. Long ago, we saw what fear does, she told the doctor, her voice as calm as still water. Fear of death, fear of irrelevance. It drives people to build walls, to conquer, to hoard. We chose a different path. We chose to remove the fear, and in doing so, we found an everlasting peace. But as the doctor listened, she couldn't help but wonder about the cost of such perfect harmony. A life without fear might also be a life without the courage to face it. A life without ambition might be a life without the drive to discover something truly new. The Shibogans' ritual was a gift, yes, but she suspected it was also a profound and heavy burden, one they had carried for so long they had forgotten its weight. The doctor couldn't shake the feeling of familiarity that clung to the Shibogan ritual. It was more than just a passing resemblance to her own regenerations. It felt like a distant echo, a song she almost knew the words to. She watched a mother comforting her child, telling her not to fear the coming slumber. "You will wake up, and I will be here, and we will remember this conversation," she said. The doctor thought of her own painful farewells, the faces she had lost, the moments that were gone forever. Her life was a string of goodbyes. Theirs was a circle of hellos. The emotional core of their experience was the polar opposite of hers. Hers was about loss and change. Theirs was about preservation and continuity. She saw the technical elegance in their process. Time Lord regeneration was a messy biological explosion of energy, a last-ditch defense mechanism. It tore the body apart and rebuilt it, often with unpredictable results. A new face, new tastes, a new personality. It was a gamble. The Shibogan cycle, however, was controlled, serene, and perfect. It was a psychic and biological process working in perfect harmony with their planet. Their consciousness was stored within the planet's energy field during the slumber and then returned to a newly formed body. It was regeneration as an art form, not as a desperate act of survival. The doctor felt a pang of longing for that kind of peace, that kind of certainty. She had never known what it was like to change without losing a piece of herself. One evening, as the twin moons cast long shadows, the doctor spoke with Lyra about it. "This process," she began, choosing his words carefully, "it feels engineered, designed. It's too perfect to be natural evolution." Lyra smiled, a knowing, ancient look in her eyes. "You recognize the craft, don't you? You see the hand of the artist." The doctor pressed further. "Your people, you're not from here, are you? This system, this perfect cycle, it was created." She realized then that the Shibogans' ritual wasn't just a cultural choice. It was a technological and biological marvel, one that required an incredible understanding of life, energy, and consciousness. An understanding that was rare in the universe. The key difference, the doctor realized, was the emotional impact. For her, regeneration was trauma. It was a death, and the woman who woke up was never quite the same as the woman who had fallen. She carried the scars of each change, the ghosts of her past selves. But the Shibogans carried no such ghosts. Their memories were a seamless tapestry, unbroken by the trauma of rebirth. They remembered their past lives not as different people, but as yesterday. This lack of emotional scarring was what gave them their serenity, but the doctor wondered if it also robbed them of something vital. Did they ever feel the bittersweet sting of nostalgia? Did they understand the preciousness of a fleeting moment? Their perfection was beautiful, but it was also profoundly alien to her own chaotic existence. Lyra finally revealed the truth under the light of the twin moons. "Our ancestors were not from Caris 9, she confirmed, her voice low. "They came from a world of red grass and silver leaf trees, a world called Gallifrey." The doctor froze. She had suspected a connection, but hearing the name spoken aloud sent a shiver through her. Lyra explained that her people were descendants of a group of Gallifreyans who had grown weary of the Time Lord's grand ambitions and their obsession with power. They saw the arrogance, the political maneuvering, and the cold, detached way the Time Lords viewed the universe. They saw the Time War on the horizon, a storm gathering that would consume everything. They wanted no part in it. These early Gallifreyans were not warriors or politicians. They were scientists, artists, and philosophers who believed that the gift of long life should be used for peace, not for dominion. They saw regeneration not as a tool for survival in battle, but as a potential path to enlightenment. Fearing what their society was becoming, they fled. They traveled far across the universe, searching for a place where they could build a new way of life, free from the shadow of their powerful kin. They found Caris 9, a planet with a unique symbiotic energy field, and they saw their chance. They decided to reshape their own biology, to trade the chaotic, unpredictable regeneration of the Time Lords for something more gentle, more deliberate. Using their advanced knowledge, they created the Great Slumber. They wove their own life force into the fabric of the planet itself, creating a cycle of peaceful death and rebirth. They chose to retain all their memories to ensure their culture would never be lost, but they also chose to limit their own potential for change. They believed that ambition was the root of all conflict, so they designed a life without it. They gave up the possibility of great triumphs to avoid the risk of great tragedies. It was a monumental decision, a conscious rejection of the Time Lord way. They chose community over individuality, continuity over progress, and peace over power. They had escaped Gallifrey's destiny, but in doing so they had locked themselves into a perfect, unchanging circle. The Doctor listened, her heart heavy with the weight of this history. These people were her distant cousins, a branch of her own family tree that had chosen a different path. She thought of the Time War, of the horrors she had seen and the terrible things she had done. She understood why they had run. They had seen the fire coming and had chosen to build their home in a quiet garden far away. But she also saw the flaw in their design. By eliminating all fear and struggle, they had also eliminated the catalyst for growth. They had created a paradise, but it was a static paradise. A beautiful painting that never changed. She now understood the source of their peace, but she also understood the profound sacrifice they had made to achieve it. The perfect circle of Shibogan life was about to be broken. The crisis began with a young boy named Kale. He was bright, curious, and full of questions that, honestly, the other Shibogans had stopped asking long ago. As his third great slumber approached, a deep-seated fear began to grow in his heart. It was a feeling so alien to his people that he could barely put it into words. He didn't want to die, even for a night. He didn't want to close his eyes and trust that he would wake up. He wanted to keep living, without interruption. He wanted to see what would happen if he just kept going. He loved his life, every moment of it, and the thought of surrendering it, even temporarily, felt like a betrayal. On the eve of the ritual, as the rest of his community prepared for their peaceful transition, Kale ran. He hid himself deep in the glowing forests of Caris 9, refusing to participate. When the sun rose the next morning, the Shibogans were reborn as they always were, but Kale was different. He hadn't died, he had simply aged a day. For the first time in millennia, a Shibogan was living outside the cycle. At first the others were confused, then concerned. They pleaded with him to rejoin them in the next slumber, but Kale refused. He was fascinated by the changes he felt. A new line on his hand, a feeling of tiredness at the end of the day, the sharpness of a memory from yesterday that wasn't part of an endless loop. He was experiencing linear time, and it was, honestly, exhilarating. This individual choice, however, sent ripples of instability across the entire planet. The Shibogans' life cycle was not just a cultural practice, it was a deeply integrated biological and planetary system. Their collective consciousness, their life energy, was tied to the energy field of Caris 9. The system was designed for total participation. Kale's refusal created an imbalance, a tiny crack in the foundation of their world. The planet's energy field began to fluctuate. The glowing flora flickered, and the air, once so calm, now carried a faint tremor of anxiety. The Shibogans began to feel something they hadn't felt in ages: uncertainty. Kale's personal choice was threatening the stability of their entire civilization. This created a profound moral dilemma for the Doctor. She believed passionately in the right of the individual to choose their own path. Kale's desire to live, to experience life on his own terms, was something the Doctor deeply respected. She saw in the boy a spark of the courage and curiosity that drove him. Yet she also saw the consequences. Kale's freedom could lead to the collapse of a world that had known nothing but peace for thousands of years. Was one person's right to choose more important than the survival and harmony of an entire society? Interfering would mean forcing Kale to conform, to give up his newfound sense of self, but doing nothing could mean watching a whole world unravel. She was caught between his belief in individual liberty and his duty to protect life. The planet's instability grew worse. The gentle hum of Caris 9 was replaced by a discordant buzz. The weather became erratic, with sudden rainstorms followed by unsettling periods of silence. The Shibogans themselves began to show signs of stress. Their memories, once perfectly clear upon rebirth, started to have small gaps, a forgotten name here, a fuzzy detail there. The perfect continuity of their existence was fraying at the edges. Kale, meanwhile, continued to age. He grew taller, his voice deepened, and for the first time, he saw worry in the faces of his people. His act of defiance was no longer just a personal journey, it was a public crisis, and the burden of it was starting to weigh on him. He was free, but his freedom was costing everyone else their peace. The doctor, Tessa, and Mathew debated what to do. Mathew argued for intervention, saying they have to force him to rejoin the cycle, and insisted it's simple math. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one. Tessa, however, was horrified by the idea. She replied, "You can't force someone to die even if it's temporary. Kale has a right to his own life. Maybe this is what they need. Maybe it's time for them to change." The doctor remained silent for a long time, watching the Shibogans. She saw the fear returning to their eyes, the very emotion their ancestors had sacrificed everything to escape. Their perfect system had a fatal flaw. It had no way to accommodate dissent. It was all or nothing. The doctor realized that the problem wasn't just Kale, it was the rigidity of the system itself. The early Gallifreyans who designed it had not accounted for the simple, stubborn desire of an individual to be different. They had created a paradise so perfect that it couldn't bend without breaking. The planet's energy field was trying to compensate for the missing piece of the puzzle, Kale's consciousness. But it couldn't. The system required a complete circuit of energy and memory. Kale's absence was like a broken wire, causing the whole network to short-circuit. The doctor knew she couldn't force Kale to die, but she also couldn't let the planet's ecosystem collapse. She needed a third option, a solution that respected both the individual and the collective. She approached Kale, who was now a young man, looking older than any Shibogan had in millennia. "You wanted to live," the doctor said gently, "and you have. You've learned something they've all forgotten, that every day is precious because it only happens once." Kale nodded, tears in his eyes. "But I'm hurting them," he whispered. "I never wanted that." The doctor looked at the flickering lights of the forest and the anxious faces of the Shibogans. The crisis had reached its peak. The planet was groaning under the strain. The choice was no longer just about Kale. It was about whether the Shibogans could find a way to evolve beyond the perfect, fragile circle they had created for themselves. The doctor formulated a desperate, beautiful plan. She couldn't repair the Shibogan system from the outside, but she could offer it a new piece of information, a new variable that might allow it to adapt. The system was failing because it was built on the principle of perfect total memory recall. It had no concept of letting go. The doctor had an abundance of memories, many of them painful. She decided to offer one of her own to the planet's energy field, a memory that contained the essence of change, loss, and survival. She would sacrifice a piece of her own past to give the Shibogans a future. It was a risky, deeply personal act, a gift from one lonely god to a people who had forgotten how to be truly mortal. She explained her plan to Lyra and Kale. She would connect Het Mind to the planet's core during the next great slumber. She would release a single powerful memory into the collective consciousness of the Shibogans. She chose the memory of her first regeneration. Not the details of the event, but the raw emotion of it. The terror of ending, the confusion of beginning anew, the pain of losing a self, and the stubborn hope of carrying on. It was a memory of imperfect, chaotic change, the very thing the Shibogans had tried to eliminate. By introducing this concept into their shared consciousness, she hoped to teach their system how to handle an anomaly, how to bend instead of a break. The sacrifice was immense. To give up a memory, especially one so fundamental to her identity, was to give up a part of herself. Tessa looked at the doctor with profound sadness, understanding the weight of her choice. Mathew was silent, his skepticism finally giving way to awe. As the Shibogans prepared for their slumber, Kale made his own decision. He would join them. He had lived his linear life, and he had learned its lessons. Now, he would rejoin his people, not out of coercion, but out of love. He would carry the memory of his defiance with him, but he would no longer stand apart. His choice, combined with the doctor's sacrifice, would be the catalyst for a new beginning. As the silvery light of the ritual enveloped the planet, the doctor connected herself to its heart. She let go of the memory, feeling a piece of her own history dissolve into the great, humming energy of Caris 9. She felt the planet's consciousness absorb it, process it, and for a moment, she shared the collective mind of the Shibogans. She felt their fear, their confusion, and then a slow, dawning sense of acceptance. The system shuddered, recalibrated, and then stabilized. It had learned a new trick. It had learned that a memory could be imperfect, that a life could change, and that the cycle did not have to be close to be beautiful. When the sun rose, the Shebogans awoke. And for the first time, something was different. The next morning on Caris 9 felt different. The air was still peaceful, but it was a new kind of peace, one that felt earned, not inherited. The Shebogans awoke from their slumber, their memories intact, but with a new addition. They all shared a faint ghost-like impression of the doctor's sacrifice, the feeling of a painful but necessary change. And they remembered Kale. They remembered his choice to live and his choice to return. The system had not erased his defiance, it had incorporated it. The crack in eternity had not been sealed, it had become part of the pattern. The planet's energy was stable again, but it was more flexible, more resilient. It had learned to accommodate the unexpected. This shared experience sparked a quiet revolution. The Shebogans gathered not in fear, but in thoughtful contemplation. They realized that their perfect, unchanging cycle had been a beautiful dream, but one that had kept them from truly living. Kale, now reborn with his community, but holding the unique memory of his time apart, spoke to them. "We tried to avoid all endings," he said, his voice clear and steady. "But in doing so, we forgot that some moments are special because they don't last forever." He suggested a change to their most sacred tradition. They would keep the great slumber, for it was the source of their connection and longevity. But they would no longer strive for perfect, identical repetition. Instead, they decided to start a new tradition. Each cycle, every Shebogan would choose one special moment, one small perfect joy, to hold on to and cherish above all others. A shared laugh, the taste of a particular fruit, the sight of the twin moons rising. These moments would become their personal treasures, unique to each life cycle. Their history would no longer be a single monolithic story, but a rich tapestry woven from billions of tiny, precious, and unique threads. They were choosing to introduce variation, to celebrate the small imperfections and fleeting beauties of life. They were learning to value the journey, not just the endless repeating destination. The doctor watched this transformation with a quiet, profound sense of satisfaction. She had not imposed a solution. She had simply provided a catalyst. The Shebogans had found their own way forward. They were evolving, not by abandoning their past, but by building upon it. They had found a balance between their cherished peace and the unpredictable nature of life. They were still the gentle, kind people the travelers had met. But now there was a new depth in their eyes, a new appreciation for the present moment. They had faced their first real crisis in millennia, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more complete. Their eternal cycle was no longer a cage, it was a canvas, and they were finally ready to paint something new. As the TARDIS prepared to depart, the travelers took one last look at Caris 9. The planet seemed to breathe more deeply now, its silvery light pulsing with a gentle, confident rhythm. The Shebogans waved goodbye, their faces full of a gratitude that needed no words. The trio had arrived on a world that felt like a museum, beautiful but static. They were leaving a world that was alive, a world that was learning and growing. The experience had changed them too. They had been reminded of a simple but profound truth that was easy to forget when hurtling through time and space. The importance of the small, quiet moments that make up a life. Tessa found a new sense of peace. She had always been drawn to grand emotions and epic stories, but Caris 9 had taught her the power of subtlety. She realized that true beauty wasn't always in the dramatic crescendo. It was often found in the quiet interludes. The gentle hum of the TARDIS, the shared cup of tea with friends, the simple act of watching the stars pass by. These were not just moments between adventures, they were the adventures themselves. She understood now that a life filled with small, cherished joys could be just as meaningful as one filled with grand, heroic deeds. She had found a quiet strength in the Shebogans' newfound appreciation for the mundane. Mathew, the man of action and progress, had been humbled. He had initially dismissed the Shebogans as stagnant, but he now saw the wisdom in their path. He realized that his relentless drive for what was next had often blinded him to the beauty of what was now. The crisis had shown him that stability and community were not weaknesses, but powerful forces in their own right. He learned that progress wasn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it was about deepening one's understanding of where one already was. He looked at the doctor and Tessa, his friends, and felt a wave of appreciation not for where they were going, but for the simple fact that they were here, together, in this moment. The doctor, for her part, felt a rare sense of tranquility. She had given away a painful memory, and in its place, she felt a quiet space. She had helped a people evolve, not by fighting a monster, but by sharing a piece of her own vulnerability. The Shibogans had taught her that even an ancient Time Lord could still learn about life. She piloted the TARDIS into the vortex, the familiar wheezing groan of the engines sounding less like a machine and more like a contented sigh. The universe was still full of dangers and wonders, but for now, the three travelers were content to float in the quiet space between worlds, sharing a silent, comfortable peace, finding solace in the simple, ordinary, and beautiful act of just being.